I don't even know where to begin. How do you explain something like this? I guess I'll just start from the beginning and try to lay it all out, piece by piece. I wasn't planning on any of this. If you told me that one day, I'd be sitting here, confessing to a decision I made all those years ago, I would have laughed in your face. It wasn't like I set out to destroy my marriage or my family. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, "Hey, let's make a huge mistake today." But sometimes, that's how life works, right? It started innocently enough. Ryan and I met at one of those boring office events. One of those annual, team building things where we're all just trying to survive. I was there with Ethan, of course. Ethan had been my husband for a few years, and we were solid. We were comfortable. That's the thing about marriage, isn't it? You get comfortable. Things settle into this rhythm where everything feels like it's in place, but at the same time, there's this quiet part of you that starts to feel, well, unseen. Ethan wasn't doing anything wrong. He was a great husband. He worked hard, was loyal, dependable, and he loved me in that steady, unshakable way. But there was something missing. I felt like a part of me had faded. Not in a dramatic, I want to get out of my marriage. Way more in a, is this it, kind of way. I didn't even realize how much I craved something new, something different. And then there was Ryan. At first, it was nothing. Just a few casual exchanges during the event, a few laughs here and there. He was funny, confident, and easy to talk to. But there was something else. He looked at me differently. I noticed the way he listened to me, like he actually cared about what I had to say. Ethan and I had gotten into a routine, a routine where we didn't really talk about anything deeper anymore. We were fine, but we weren't really connected. Ryan, on the other hand, was full of life. He had this energy, this spark that I found myself drawn to. Maybe it was just the excitement of meeting someone new. Maybe it was just that feeling of being seen in a way I hadn't been in a while. Whatever it was, I was hooked. One night, after a few too many glasses of wine, we ended up talking more than I'd planned. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I know we were standing by the exit when he said something funny. I laughed, maybe a little too loud, but it felt genuine. In that moment, it felt like he was the only person in the room who understood me. There was this connection, this electricity between us that I hadn't felt in, I can't even remember how long. Before I knew what was happening, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't some long, dramatic kiss. It was quick, just a flash of contact. But it was enough. The moment his lips touched mine, everything else seemed to disappear. I pulled back, heart racing, my head spinning. I felt guilty right away, but I also felt alive. It wasn't something I planned. It wasn't something I even thought I wanted, but there it was. It had happened. I could have stopped right there. I could have pulled away and told him that it wasn't right. I could have walked away and never looked back. But instead, I let it happen. I didn't know how to stop it. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss. It wasn't just physical. It wasn't just about the fact that Ryan was attractive or that we had chemistry. It was more than that. It was about the way he made me feel. He made me feel noticed. I hadn't felt noticed in years. Ethan loved me, I knew that. But it was different. It was quiet, constant, and steady. But not like that electric feeling I got every time Ryan smiled at me. And before I knew it, we were texting. Just little things at first. Funny memes, random thoughts about our day. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was just a friendly conversation. It wasn't anything serious. It wasn't a big deal. But the more we texted, the more I looked forward to it. It became a little escape from my everyday life. It wasn't just that Ryan was different. It was that he made me feel like I wasn't just a wife or a mother or someone's daughter. I felt like I was me again. Then came the lunch. Ryan suggested it casually, and I agreed without really thinking about it. It was just lunch, right? Nothing serious. Ethan was at work, so I thought it would be fine. We met at this little cafe down the street from the office. I sat across from him, and it felt like we were in our own little world. I was nervous, but it wasn't the usual nervousness. It was like we were both aware of the unspoken tension between us, the thing that was too obvious to ignore. I remember every little detail of that lunch. The way Ryan's hand brushed mine as we reached for the same salt shaker. The way he smiled when he caught me staring at him, like he knew something I didn't. I felt my heart race, and my thoughts became muddled. I knew I should have been thinking about Ethan, about my life at home. But instead, all I could think about was this connection with Ryan. It was like I was living in a completely different world for an hour. When we finished eating, he walked me to my car. I was trying to act normal, but I could tell he was just as aware of the situation as I was. He stopped just before I reached the door, and for a moment, we just stood there, looking at each other. I felt the tension building. Then, without warning, he kissed me again. This time, it was longer, more intense. I didn't pull away. I didn't stop him. It felt like the world had stopped spinning, like everything else had faded away. In that moment, I wasn't anyone's wife or mother. I wasn't someone caught in a marriage that had become routine. I was just me, and Ryan was just there. And for those few seconds, it felt like the only thing that mattered. I knew, deep down, that what I was doing wasn't right. But I couldn't bring myself to stop. I didn't want to stop, because in that moment, I felt alive again. I felt wanted. I felt seen. And I couldn't let go of that. After that day, everything started to spiral. It wasn't like I suddenly became some wild, reckless person, but I knew things had changed. I wasn't the same woman anymore. Not in the way I felt about myself, at least. That kiss with Ryan, the conversations, the way he made me feel. It was all becoming a slow addiction. And the worst part, I didn't want to stop. I convinced myself I could keep everything in balance, that I could handle both worlds. I could keep my family intact and still get what I needed from Ryan, from this secret, stolen part of my life. I never meant for it to go this far. Honestly, I didn't. At first, I thought I could keep it just to the texts, just to the harmless little flirtations. But it became more. I'd find excuses to meet up with him. A quick lunch here, a coffee after work there. We'd talk about everything. About the little things that nobody else noticed about me. The way my eyes would light up when I got excited about something. Or how I'd bite my lip when I was nervous. It felt good to have someone notice. Ryan saw parts of me that Ethan didn't. And I hated myself for it, but it felt like I couldn't stop. I couldn't walk away from the attention, the thrill. But then, things started to get messy. Ethan wasn't an idiot. He started noticing that I was acting differently. Maybe it was the late nights at work. Maybe it was the way I was more distant, less engaged when we did spend time together. But he knew something was off. He never confronted me about it directly, but I could tell. He was too good a man not to notice. One night, we had dinner together, just the two of us. Ethan was talking about some new project at work. The kind of thing that usually would have bored me to tears. But for some reason, that night, I felt a pang of guilt when I looked at him. I was thinking about Ryan. I was thinking about what we'd done, about the secret I was keeping. Ethan was looking at me, waiting for me to respond, but all I could think about was how much I had taken him for granted. Natalie? Ethan's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. He was waiting for me to reply, but I didn't even know what he'd said. Sorry, babe, what? I asked, forcing a smile. He narrowed his eyes, a flicker of concern crossing his face. You okay? You've been kinda distant lately. I froze. He could feel it too. The distance. The walls I'd been building between us without even realizing it. I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. I'm fine, I said quickly, almost too quickly. Just tired, I guess. But I could tell he didn't buy it. He didn't press me further, but I could see the worry in his eyes. And that made everything worse. I didn't want him to worry. I didn't want him to feel like something was wrong. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to undo what I had started with Ryan. The guilt started eating at me more and more. I would lie in bed next to Ethan, listening to his steady breathing, and feel this deep ache in my chest. He was such a good man. He deserved so much more than I was giving him. I would close my eyes and think about how much I loved him. But then Ryan's face would pop into my mind, and I'd feel that surge of excitement all over again. It was like I was living a double life, constantly torn between the two worlds. And then, I found out I was pregnant. The moment the test turned positive, I was paralyzed. I stared at it, trying to process the weight of the news. My mind raced 1,000 miles per minute. I wasn't sure what I was thinking, but the first thing that hit me was panic. I was pregnant. But who was the father? I had no idea how to even begin dealing with that question. I couldn't go to Ethan and tell him the truth. How could I? The man I loved, the man who had been nothing but good to me, deserved the truth. But how could I tell him that this baby, this child, might not be his? How could I break his heart like that? The next few days were a blur. I kept going over it in my mind, trying to find a way out of the situation. The idea of telling him, the thought of seeing that shock and devastation on his face, was more than I could bear. So, I did what I thought was the only option. I lied. I told Ethan the baby was his. I don't even remember the exact moment I made the decision. But once the words were out of my mouth, they felt permanent. I couldn't take them back. I couldn't go back to the point before everything changed. And I told myself, over and over again, that it would be okay. That we could raise this child together, that Ethan would love this baby just like he loved Mia. At first, I thought maybe I could make it work. Maybe the truth wouldn't matter if Ethan loved the child like his own. I could pretend it was his. I could keep up the lie, keep everything looking perfect on the outside. Ethan would be a great father, just like he was with Mia. I could keep the family intact, and everything would be fine. But the guilt, it ate at me every day. Every time I saw Ethan look at me with that trusting, loving gaze, I felt like I was suffocating. Every time Mia called him Daddy, and I saw the way he smiled and responded, my heart would twist in my chest. I knew the truth. And every time she ran to him, asking him to pick her up or help her with something, it felt like I was watching a lie unfold before my eyes. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't undo what I'd done. So, I buried the truth deeper and deeper, convincing myself that it was better this way. It was easier this way. But the thing is, lies always catch up with you. They always have a way of coming to light, no matter how hard you try to hide them. And eventually, the truth came knocking. It's funny how things build up over time. How you can carry a lie for so long and think you've gotten away with it, that you've built a life that's strong enough to cover up the cracks. But the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, it finds its way to the surface. And when it does, there's no going back. The first real crack came when Mia was about 5 years old. I knew something was off when she started asking questions. It was innocent enough at first, just casual observations about the way she looked compared to Ethan. Little things like, "Mummy, why don't I look like you?" Or, "Why do I have a different nose than Daddy?" It should have been an easy thing to answer. I could have told her that every family is different, that people all look unique, and that sometimes, parents and children don't always look alike. But every time she asked, I felt that familiar twist in my stomach. The weight of the secret pressing down on me. Mia was too young to understand what was going on, but it didn't stop her from noticing things. And every time I had to come up with a lie, it felt like I was suffocating just a little more. But then came the day Ethan dropped the bombshell. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, when he casually mentioned that he'd done something. A DNA test. It was one of those, just for peace of mind. Things that he'd done on a whim. I didn't think much of it at first. He had a tendency to do things like that, always trying to make sure everything was in order. But the way he said it, so casually, so matter-of-factly, something about it struck me. My heart stopped in my chest. "I did a DNA test on Mia," Ethan said, as if it was no big deal. I thought it might be good to know for sure. For a moment, I didn't even know how to respond. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. My mouth went dry, and I could barely breathe. My brain was screaming at me to say something, anything, but nothing came out. All I could do was stand there, frozen in place, trying to process what he had just said. I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come. I wanted to ask him why. I wanted to shout, to demand to know what made him think it was necessary. But instead, I just stood there, paralyzed. The thought of what he might find out, of the truth coming crashing down, was enough to make my legs feel like they were going to give out. Ethan didn't seem to notice my reaction. He kept talking, oblivious to the storm that was brewing inside of me. "It's just something I've been thinking about for a while. I love her, Natalie. But I needed to know the truth." That was the moment it all started to unravel. He didn't know, of course. He didn't know that the truth was much worse than he could ever imagine. I had kept the lie going for so long that I thought I could keep it up forever. I thought I could protect him from the hurt, protect him from the truth. But the universe doesn't work like that. And now, Ethan had already begun to question things. He was hoping the DNA test would give him answers, but the answers he was looking for, they weren't the ones he was going to find. I tried to keep my voice steady as I said, "What do you mean, Ethan? Why would you do something like that? Mia's our daughter. You've always been her father." He paused. The shift in his expression was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. He looked at me, studying me, trying to figure out if I knew something he didn't. "I just wanted to be sure, Nat. I don't want to say this, but I've had this feeling for a while now. Something's felt off." I felt the floor drop out beneath me. That was it. He had felt something. He hadn't come right out and said it, but it was obvious now. He had suspected something wasn't right. And when you've been married for as long as we had, you get to know each other's silences, each other's little tics. He didn't need to say the words. I could see it in his face. He had already started to wonder, to doubt. And now, all I could do was wait for the bomb to drop. That night, I lay in bed next to him, both of us pretending to be asleep, but neither of us were. I could feel him beside me, his body still and tense. He wasn't asleep either. He was just waiting for me to say something. I knew it. He was waiting for me to come clean. But I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to say it. The guilt was unbearable, and yet, there was a part of me that still wanted to hold on to the lie. I wanted to pretend that everything was still okay, that nothing had changed. But the truth had already started to seep in, like water through cracks in the foundation. I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The next morning, Ethan sat me down in the kitchen. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. He had the results in his hand. I knew what they said, and I knew what he was about to ask. "I need you to be honest with me," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with hurt. "I did the test, Natalie. Mia isn't my daughter, is she?" And there it was. The question I had been dreading, the question I had been avoiding for years. The truth that had been buried so deep inside me, finally surfacing. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, my chest tight, my head spinning. My heart was breaking, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Ethan was waiting for me to say something. Anything. But I couldn't. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. And in that moment, I knew that everything was about to change. The life we had built together, the family we had created, was about to come crashing down. It feels like a blur now, looking back. That moment, when Ethan asked me the question I couldn't avoid anymore. It felt like the world stopped spinning. Everything went silent. It wasn't just the words he'd spoken that hit me, it was the weight of them. The realization that the person I loved most in the world, the person who had trusted me completely, was finally seeing the truth. And I had no more excuses. No more lies to hide behind. For what felt like an eternity, I just sat there, frozen. I couldn't look him in the eye. My stomach was in knots, my chest tight, my throat dry. I wanted to speak, to apologize, to tell him everything. But the words just wouldn't come. What could I say? How could I explain something so horrible? How could I justify the betrayal, the lie I'd carried for so long? Ethan was still waiting for me to respond, but I couldn't move. I could feel him watching me, his eyes full of confusion, hurt, and disappointment. That look of disappointment, was worse than anything else. Worse than his anger, worse than the silence. I had never wanted to hurt him. But here I was, staring at him, unable to do anything to fix it. I'm so sorry. I finally managed to whisper. But the apology felt so small, so inadequate compared to the magnitude of what I had done. I could hear the cracks in my voice, the tremble that betrayed the fear I felt. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. Ethan took a deep breath, his face hardening. He didn't say anything for a while. I could see his thoughts racing. He was trying to piece it all together, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. But I could see it in his eyes. He was hurt. He was betrayed, and nothing I said would change that. Is this really true? He asked finally, his voice barely a whisper. Mia? She's not mine. How long have you known? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart shattered all over again. I felt like I was choking on the guilt, on the weight of my lies. How could I have let it go this far? How could I have let him believe that Mia was his for all these years? I found out. I found out right away. I admitted, tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't keep the guilt from spilling over. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know what to say. So I lied. I told myself it was for the best, that it would keep our family together. The Ethan shook his head slowly, the disbelief on his face turning into something colder. You lied to me. You lied to us. For 7 years. And now you expect me to believe that you did it to protect me. I choked on the words. I didn't want to lose you, Ethan. I didn't want to lose what we had. I thought if I told you the truth, it would break everything. It would ruin our family, and I couldn't let that happen. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ethan stood up slowly, walking toward the window. I could see his back stiffen as he stared out at nothing, trying to process everything. And I could see it. The anger building in him, the realization that his entire life had been built on a lie. When he finally spoke again, his voice was calm, but I could hear the hurt in every word. I don't even know who you are anymore, Natalie. All these years, I've been raising a child that isn't mine, a child I thought was mine, and you've been lying to me. To us. The words cut through me, each one landing like a dagger in my chest. It hurt so much to hear him say that, but I knew he was right. I had ruined everything. I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. I stood up too, but I didn't know what to say. What could I say? There was no excuse, no way to explain what I had done. The truth was that I had made selfish choices. I had chosen my own fear, my own guilt, over the man I loved, and now, here we were. My lies had torn us apart. I'm sorry, I said again, but my voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know if it was enough. I didn't know if anything could make up for the years of deception. Ethan didn't answer right away. He just stood there, still staring out the window, and I could see it now. He wasn't just hurt. He was angry, and I couldn't blame him. I had taken everything from him. The trust, the love, the family. I had destroyed it all. After what felt like hours, Ethan finally spoke again, his voice quieter now, but still full of pain. I don't know if I can do this, Natalie. I don't know if I can forgive you. His words hit me like a freight train. He didn't say it angrily, but the sadness in his voice was enough to break me completely. I had hoped, somewhere deep down, that maybe, just maybe, I could fix things. That maybe we could go through therapy or talk it out, and somehow find a way back to what we had. But hearing him say those words made me realize just how far gone everything was. He couldn't forgive me. He couldn't just forget this. I understand, I whispered, knowing there was nothing I could say to make it better. I never expected you to. I'm so sorry. We stood there in silence for a long time, neither of us knowing what to do next. Finally, Ethan turned toward me. His eyes were red, his face pale, but there was something else in his gaze. A mixture of grief and resignation. I don't know what happens now, Natalie. I don't know if we can go on like this. But I need some space. I need time to think. I need to figure out what I'm supposed to do with this with you. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight, my chest aching from the weight of his words. I knew he was right. I knew that the road ahead was going to be long and painful, that the damage I'd done was irreparable. I had betrayed him in the worst way, and there was no quick fix for that. As he walked toward the door, I wanted to reach out, to beg him to stay, to tell him that I loved him, that I'd never meant for any of this to happen. But I didn't. Because I knew that whatever happened next, I had lost him. And that was something I would have to live with for the rest of my life. The door closed behind him with a soft click. And I was left standing there, in the silence of our broken home, with nothing but the wreckage of the life I had destroyed. I had lost my family, and I had no idea how to find my way back.